First off, I'd like to thank these amazing people who decided to support me directly and make my work here on the platform so much easier. And remember, if you also want to help me out, the missile knows where the join button is at all times. Hello pilots, welcome back. How have your battles been? Mine have been going well. Today I'm flying the Gripen C, specifically the South African Gripen C in the British line. It carries the worst Fox 3s in all of top tier, and for some reason doesn't have the buffed warhead like the Mika. Despite its mediocre performance, the R Darter, which is basically an export Derby, fits really well with the Gripen's gameplay. I'd say it works nicely with light fighters in general. That's why I picked this Gripen for today's video. Since this is the worst Gripen, if it does well, the others will too. Though some matchmaking factors should be kept in mind. For example, the Italian and Swedish Gripen will probably face France a lot, which means facing Mikas. So if you want a video with those as well, let me know down below. Well, a recent change, the top-tier battle rating decompression really helped every jet at 13.7, literally all of them. And this Gripen, which was kinda struggling before, is now back to being a star. Of course, a star in its own way. The Gripen has a pretty limited loadout of only 4 Fox 3s and 2 IR missiles. That means it's tough to pull off a lot of aces with it, but it's a jet that consistently bags 2 to 4 kills if you play it well. And that's the point. It's back to being a very comfortable plane to fly. It's simple, forgiving of mistakes, has excellent defensive capability, and that's what I'm going to show today. As you can see, for the first match, I'm already starting in a super aggressive spot. The Gripen, when played well, can be a real playmaker. I'm going to try to play this early game solo to turn around a possible loss my team might face. For now, it looks like I'm flying unnoticed out here, so I can relax. Usually the guys flying high on their side at the start don't react well to missiles coming from below, and that's a pretty common sight. Now I'm going to extend a bit more to the right because I don't want to end up in a 1 versus 7 3 minutes into the match, especially since there's a target flying alone over there that I want to frag too. Since the payload is limited and I'm basically an F-22 right now, I'm gonna frag this guy with a 9M. Any R Darter I can save is good for me. Alright, that was a great start. I got 2 easy frags and still have 3 R Darters. I'm guessing the enemies who went for the furball are pretty far away, so I'll head there and come back when I get close. This Fox 3 is usually awful for rear aspect launches, so don't do this kind of shot too often. I only used it here because the conditions were really favorable, and even then, it didn't hit. Alright, we managed to snag 4 frags pretty easily just with mind games. Now there are 2 guys who probably went back to the airfield. I'll find them and come back, because if I showed every idle flight in the match, the first part of the video would be 10 minutes long. Here I'm going to have to work to get this guy off the runway. He's already hiding, and if I just stay on top of the airfield, the match will end like that. I'm going to move a bit farther out, all while still saving a little fuel. Alright, I've given the 2 enemies a bit of space to breathe. Now it's their move. The last pilot to be taken down still took off the wrong way. He should have done a defensive aspect takeoff, not an attack one. Well, I did what I had to do. A lot of players rage when the enemy does the right thing. Nobody takes off with zero chance of success, right? Now, on to the next match. For the second match, I'm gonna fly with my team in the early game. The aggressive spot on this map early on is a bit more mountainous, and I definitely don't want to rely on multipathing to survive, especially in situations where I could end up 1 versus 5 or 1 versus 6. So, we're going with that classic defensive pathing. Some missiles are already coming in. Since I'm facing Fakurs and all those missiles we know, I'm going to do a strong defense right away to make sure I don't run into trouble when the BVR phase ends. I managed to stay in the center, which is exactly where I want to be. If you take a super defensive stance while flying a Gripen, you might end up with not many frags. The map coverage for this jet is kinda poor because of its mediocre engine, so at all times, you need to be willing to take a bit more risk. The match is looking a bit tougher than I'd like. Everyone's flying low and alert, and my missile is terrible for hitting targets doing multipathing. That was one of those desperate shots to get a frag, but this time it wasn't just luck. My team got crushed, and I need to get a kill and get out of the middle of the battlefield before more enemies pile in. The Gripen doesn't have the best offensive power to hold a 1 versus all for long. Now all I can do is extend in a way that not all the enemies follow me. I need to survive and create windows where I can get a kill without dying. The frag looks tempting, but your will to push further has to be stronger. So I keep extending, even though my defense and overshoot were excellent. The situation looks rough, but honestly, it couldn't be better. Look, I had 3 targets chasing me. Now I only have 2, and only one of them could beat me if I go for a hard engage. I just need to wait for the right moment to start the aggressive circles. So in a few moments I can start my play and eventually try to take them out for their own downfall. almost down, now only the toughest ones left. In these conditions, the Gripen has a bit more nose control than the F-18, so this was close, but I was already expecting my win. I didn't mention it earlier, but I dueled near the airfield to make sure that even if I ran out of fuel, I could eventually rearm. Check out the following scenes. The funniest part is that landing like that, my biggest problem would have been if someone was camping the airfield. Too bad this F-16 I'm going after thought of that way too late. That's it, folks. A tough match is a fun match. No OP stuff, just players enjoying the experience. On to the next one. It's no surprise that the Gripen is more fun to fly. Any jet at its battle rating is, because that's how a balanced game without snail's greed works. The game's meant to entertain, and that's how it should be. It's the minimum, not something we should demand. In this match, I'm gonna fly low altitude, a style a lot of casual players enjoy, to show that the Gripen is super adaptable. If you play it right and make efficient choices, you can go far while having fun and not being overly methodical. Not everyone wants to play to be a pro player. Sometimes you just want to relax. So to hit that goal, stick with me till the end. In short, anyone playing this style is already used to where enemies and allies are going. You just need to be in the right place at the right time, always as close to the enemies as possible while staying alive as long as you can. On this map, it's pretty easy because this side has a huge advantage. I've got kilometer-long cover to push forward and rain fire without getting punished. Alright folks, that's all for today. Hope you liked it. Do you agree or disagree with anything I said? Tell me down in the comments. Your feedback is super important to me. The video ends, but the chat stays. Karma out.